No, you can't. Just gotta let it happen.
Okay, so welcome to the Radio Rejekts podcast. My name is Lou, and always the man next to me, the man of sounds. We have
DJ
Sab. Always trying to figure out what he's gonna call himself every episode.
And I saw in one episode, he was like, "Am I Sebastian today,
Am
or
I?
am I DJ Sab?"
I like it. I like little Sabby. Okay, and then for our guests, we allow them to just introduce themselves and kind of what you're bringing to the table.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have something on the table that can kind of help you represent that. But in that camera, go ahead and just introduce yourselves to the audience.
All right, so my name is Fatimah Ibidunni, and I guess my online presence is simply Tima, but I'm here to talk about my book, Sparked.
Perfect. Okay. Sab, told me that he wants to have you on the podcast.
Yeah.
So he's like, oh, you got to read this book. So we've been kind of exchanging the book back and forth. I mean, he just kind of really dove into it. He took like a really good kind of welcome to it. So he has plenty of notes I know that he wants to kind of get across. But can we, for me, I think the very, I guess the first question that I really want to ask is how you get started writing a book. Because I mean, there's a lot of people that make music. There's a lot, and it doesn't mean that those things are not as, as hard to do. But writing a book is just a very surreal thing for me to hear someone say. So can you give us a little background as far as the book itself that you have brought with you, and then also how do you get started writing at least this particular book?
Yeah. I'll answer your first question, which was, what is the book about?
Okay.
So like it says, the book is called Sparked, and it is about how can we all basically figure out what is our own version of reaching our own success. Because I think that a lot of times we tend to look to the left and to the right of what other people are doing, and we lose the focus on what is our thing, what is that spark that you have that can move you towards your own version of being successful and getting to your potential that already exists within you. So the book basically explores all of that and what the journey looks like. So for me, I wanted to write it because it was a manual I wish I had. So this book basically serves as that for other people who are probably going through that journey of what is life, where do I go, what is my potential, what am I supposed to be doing? So that's that. We can talk a little bit more about it.
Yeah, of course.
But how did I start writing the book?
Yeah, I mean, is this something that you've always wanted to do? You've always wanted to write books, or is this something that kind of I know you talked in the book as far as starting off, where you've had this kind of I wouldn't say harsh, but you spoke with a woman that kind of just laid it out flat and said you need to figure out how to describe yourself, and you kind of had this awakening. Is that where that kind of started, where you're like, okay, I want to write this down?
No. So after that moment, I started journaling more. Always too, I did write little things. I had like diaries in high school and stuff like that. But I really started being intentional with my journaling after that conversation. And then you might have seen, am I talking too loud?
No, you're good.
No, you're perfect. Yeah,
you might have read too that I talked about I was given a journal at the end of that internship, which was really interesting because I think that A, that conversation I had, and then B, the combination of getting a journal, it just worked and it meshed together, and I started writing more. So a lot of the concepts in the book I did pull from my journal. If you look at my journal now, I have literally sticky notes in there because I took a lot of the things I used to write about in my journal and put them into the book.
Yeah.
But no, I did not want to write a book. I hated English. Do you guys remember Mr. Hackney? I don't know if you had Mr. Hackney.
I didn't have Mr. Hackney.
Okay, well, I hated English, and he knew I hated English, and my parents knew I hated English class. I hated writing.
Yeah, because I even noticed too as well, in one of your posts, you were writing a journal. You said this is the year of Tima.
The Tima.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, so this probably is like the generating that thought of like everything that you're already pretty much writing your book before you even knew you were writing your book, I guess, right?
Yeah. And so the way I started writing the book was I was reached out to by this professor at Georgetown on LinkedIn. He reached out to me last year, November. I saw it. I ignored it. I was like, whatever. He was like, yeah, I'm gathering different students from across the country to write books. Like, are you interested in doing it? I was like, write a book? No, I'll pass.
Whoa.
So yeah, I was like, I'll pass on that. And then for some reason, like January, I looked at the message again and I was like, let me respond. Mm-hmm. So I responded to him and I told him, okay, yeah, I'm interested in doing this. And I would say like 2 weeks later, I texted him and I told him, I was like, just kidding, I don't want to do it anymore. Just because like the idea of writing a book, like it sounds crazy. Like you want me to write a full thing. Like this is a book.
A lot of people don't finish those.
Yeah.
It also, I mean, I don't mean to speak for you, but it seems overwhelming.
Yeah,
like
it's very intimidating.
At some points, it could seem like you're not just, you're writing like on social media. Those are like little forms of like your own expression. Mm-hmm. But this is like this is a forever piece of a moment that you're going to provide to other people. And not only that, but now it's also like a way to like,
it's in like your family tree. It's really like it's starting your legacy in a way.
You're also telling people, like, you're motivating people. I guess if you're writing a story that's like fantasy, it's kind of like anybody can kind of take it for what it is. But this is like you're telling people, like, not only did I write a book, but I'm telling you I wrote a book because it's going to help you. And so when you're reading that, you're like, man, you're like, that's a tough thing to accomplish, that not only you're writing it, but you're also trying to convince people too, through your words, that this may benefit them to read it. Yeah.
And I think that, like you said, like my post, like I was already doing kind of like journal type posts just about myself. And writing a book is just telling your story in a way that's basically within a book. And I think even for people who write like maybe fantasy things or whatever it is, like that story has to come from somewhere. So for me, this book is my story. Yeah. But also it was formed in a way of I talked to a lot of different people to like understand what was their story. And what was crazy is there was so many common things in everybody's story. So each chapter is something that came from other people's story that was also similar to another person's story. So the book is less about like what are you supposed to do, but it's more about like what should your mindset be in getting to who you want to become. Because I don't know, for me, like I would hope that at the end of my life or whatever it is that I've accomplished everything I wanted to do, and I'm very focused on like how can I get there and like what needs to be done. So I think this book is that representation of like how can you become the person that you envision yourself to be. And like it's written in there, but that's really what it is. And I tried my best in the book to not make it seem like I was above these lessons, because I'm still learning the lessons as well. And I think no matter what age you are, like you can benefit from it. And I don't know if you remember at the end of the book, I wrote, this is not anything you guys don't know. Right. But sometimes like we need that reminder. So that's kind of what the book serves for. It's a reminder to me too. Like this was me also like working through whatever I had to work through in the book. And yeah, I don't know. It's crazy still to think that this is like a finished product that's done and people are reading. Yeah. So, yeah.
Now, I don't mean to like jump forward, but is it something where you're going to continue this as maybe like a series, or is it something where you're like, okay, that's just one chapter and I want to do something completely different?
I think that this story is told. I think that with this book, I told the story that I wanted to tell, and it's complete for what it is. I think if there's another chapter in my life that I get to that would expand on this, like maybe this is just the journey to self-actualizing, like maybe at some point I want to talk about navigating careers. Maybe I'll make a book about that.
Yeah.
If I come to a point where I want to write a memoir, cool, I'll do that. But I think Sparked is complete.
Yeah.
I think it's really cool to even create something like that where you have your own like North Star in a little bit, in a way. Like you have your own reference point to where it's like if you ever come to that realization later down in life where you're like, I actually want to try something else that is completely out of the norm of what it is I'm doing or people know me for, what they think I should be doing. It's kind of like you could always reference back to this book and like, oh, okay, where do I go here from now? I wrote this out myself. Cool. You know what I mean? So it's pretty, I feel like it's your own personal, like you're saying, like your self-awareness. It's like a lot of people have it in any kind of different action. Maybe yours came into action in the form of a book, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And it makes me happy that I can share like what I've learned, I guess, so far. But again, I'm young and I'm 22, right? So my coworker asked me this. He was like, why would I read a book about how to like navigate life from you when you're 22?
That was going to be my next question, because I could see that happening, like people playing devil's advocate with you. Like, what do you think you know? You haven't experienced much, or, you know, especially in where we come from, like the okay boomer meme, you know what I mean? When people think they just know because they have age on you, when it's like, I don't know if that's correlates to, you know, what we're talking about.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, when he told me that, I wasn't upset because I understand where you're coming from. I think what's important to realize in this book is that it's not just my stories alone. And again, I talked to a lot of different people. I did research as well to like figure out what does like a journey to becoming successful look like. So while I did add like my own personal anecdotes to like make sure that it could be a personable book, there's also the stories of other people, and there's also like research within there that supports my point. So I don't think that I know everything, and I don't want that to be like what people think I'm trying to do with this book, because if you read it, you'll understand that there's much more to that.
Right.
Okay. And can I ask too as well is I do want to get into what kind of not only criticism you may have received with it, but praise too as well. Because of writing it, can you give us both sides of, you know, that story as far as that, like, not pun intended, but both sides as far as like the, not only you spoke on like kind of like the criticism you may, you know, get back, but also the praise. Like, have you, since it's been, you know, released, have you, you know, had those kind of like small success stories? It's a small period of time, obviously, since it's been released, but still people that have been touched by it. And can you
and
speak on that?
There's a lot that's come from it already, which is really nice to see. I already spoke about the criticism of like people saying like you're too young to write about something like this. But again, I wrote it for young adults more so. So I think that the young adults who have read it so far and like DMs I've received from people, it's been received well. And a lot of people are in that transition journey right now where they're like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do next. Like, where am I supposed to go? All of that. And I think they're the ones who appreciate it the most. So I received DMs of people like, thanks for being so open and like your story and like sharing this with everyone to read, because it was something I needed in this point in my life. Yeah. So a lot of the praise is in that form. And also too, like just the praise of being like a 22-year-old author. Like I'm a young person to write and finish a book. Yeah. And like a lot of praise has been like, congratulations on finishing that. Only 2% of authors finish their books and publish them for people to read. So to realize that I've already made that accomplishment is really good, and for other people to recognize that as well, I think that's also something that I enjoy. But the biggest thing that makes me happy about this book is the only thing I wanted to come out of it was for me to touch at least one person, right? I'm past the one person now. So now it's like, how can I continue this to like touch more people with it? Because I truly believe in this book. I truly believe in what I wrote. I made sure that I was honest. I made sure that it was truthful and everything like that. So as long as it can continue to touch whoever is reading the book and they feel like inspired to go do something after they finish it, or they realize that they're capable after doing it. Like, as long as there's a takeaway for whoever's reading the book, I feel like it served its purpose.
Okay. Now, when they, or that professor rather, he contacted you about writing a book, did he give you a specific like timeline in which you had to have this completed?
They did. And the way that we wrote the book, it was very structured. So what seemed like this very big, daunting task to like write a book was very structured in a sense of it wasn't as daunting. So it first started off with like writing stories. So that's all we had to do. They were just like, talk to people of something that you're interested in and just gather interviews, write stories. So that was all it was at first. I was just talking to people and writing stories about the takeaways from their interviews. Then
almost like a journalist. So like,
I guess kind of like a journalist.
Yeah. Which kind of goes back to like you started writing in a way because of journaling a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
Did they
Sorry, I just thought it was random.
He's like, it came full circle.
Yeah. What's the next pattern I'm gonna get?
Did that professor give you, or like, did you already kind of have exactly what you wanted to write about, or did they say you could just write a book and you write whatever kind of book you want, or did they say
it was whatever kind of book?
Okay, so there's some people that wrote
so
fantasy. There's some
the
people that
in
wrote.
my cohort, they all wrote all different types of books. Like,
Okay,
That's really
there's some nonfiction, there's fiction. Some guy wrote a book about sports. Some girl wrote a book about beauty.
Yeah.
It was really whatever that you like. If you had an interest in it, like that's what you wrote about. And that was something that he was really strong about telling us, is that it needs to be a subject that is personal to you and that you're interested in, because you're not going to want to write the book at that point if it's not something that is, you have to have a reason within you for wanting to write that book. So for me, that reason was I did not feel like I didn't feel like I knew myself. I didn't feel like I knew what I wanted. I personally was lost. So like I wanted to understand how could I get out of this like lost point in life. So when I talked to people, it was really just all about, okay, like tell me about your career. Like what do you do? Like is it making you happy? Tell me about how you got there. Like how did things come full circle for you? Like what was your mindset in doing it? So in doing all those interviews and writing those stories, then we started forming the manuscript for the book. So then once we put that together, it was like, okay, what direction can this now go? So we had an initial idea, but until all of those like stories were done, the research was kind of put in, then we went into writing the book. So it wasn't like write a chapter, because that's just, where do you start?
Yeah.
So it was very structured in a sense of like, this is how the book writing process goes.
Okay.
And I'm happy that I did this because it taught me about this book industry that I had no idea about beforehand.
Like I said, it's a very surreal and bizarre thing to get into, to write a book and to have it like pressed, you know, like
when I opened the first like box of books, I literally was just like,
I would have cried.
I was like, it's a book. And my parents, they were just like, how do you feel, Tima? I was like, do you see this? Like, this is a full book. Like, how does this happen? Yeah. So it is a surreal thing still. And I don't think I've fully acknowledged either that I'm an author. Like when people are like, oh, you're an author, you wrote a book. I'm like, yeah, I wrote a book, but I don't know.
It's like, do I put myself in that category yet?
Yeah. It's like I haven't yet fully taken in that I'm an author.
Yeah.
Okay.
Feeling yet, or just mindset of being I don't know what that's supposed to be.
I mean, you're a modern day author in a way. You know what I mean? Like you're just. I don't know. I don't think there's a norm.
No, there's truth to it. I think there is truth to it. I mean, I'm not an author, so I can't really just validate for someone else that's in that realm.
Right.
But I mean, it's legit. Like if I didn't have this opportunity to interview you, I would consider, oh, this is a book and it was wrote by an author. I mean, that's just how it is.
Yeah.
So I would see it as that. I would take huge pride. I mean, obviously I know you probably are, but I mean, I would be like in awe still, like every once in a while, just look at it in the side of the room.
No,
like,
I do.
Yeah.
I do. Every time somebody like posts like a picture, like holding the book, I'm like, wow, like that's a whole book, and I wrote it, and people are reading it and enjoying it at that. I think that's like the biggest thing. Before it published and I sent them out to people, I was just like, I don't know, like, if I'm ready, just because you put so much into this book. Like, when I put so much into this book. So, and while writing it, I was like, okay, I want to be as truthful and as honest and just really stick to the story. Like, I didn't want to like sugarcoat anything. I didn't want to like put like a bow on anything just to make it sound good. Like, every single word, like, I really thought about, and to make it what it is. So to have people read it and to send it out and just to be like, okay, like, this is it, like, it's ready for the world to read. That was scary. Like, my parents were like, just send them out. I sat on them for like a week, I think. I had them for. But yeah, I mean, I think with writing a book that I've learned, it's telling your story again, like I've said. Yeah. And I think not saying it's easy to write a book, but I think that we all have a perspective, and that's exactly what books are. It's people writing their perspective for others to learn from. So this is my token that I'm leaving to the world, even when I'm gone, but my book will be there for people to take something from, to learn from, whatever that may be.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's like with everyone's dream of being any kind of art that you do. You know what I mean? It's like the reason why you do art is because you want to at least have something that people remember you from, or, you know, that kind of lives beyond your physical life. You know what I mean? So it's like your grandkids can look at that one day and be like, oh, this is what my grandmother was thinking at the time, or something like that. You know what I mean? It's almost like a time capsule.
And just with like Sparks and just that whole idea, like you said, of like, I'm kind of like a journalist or whatever that is. I think that a spark that I would say I had, or like just like an interest that I always had, was like writing, because I would journal a lot, I guess, even though I didn't like English class in particular, but like I always wrote, and like I just kept that up. And to see how simply following that spark that I had led me here to writing a book. So I think that goes with kind of anything. Like, everything starts with a small interest that then builds into to something that you might not even realize. And for me, it ended up being this book. For you, maybe you liked music growing up. Yeah, I don't know if that's true. I'm just saying.
That's a huge, really good guess. Well, you're
we've talked about it in the past. His dad was an influence on him with music, even for me as well.
Everyone in my life, I think, was an influence. Like, I would, you know, you pick and choose. Like, people introduce you to something different. You'll pull something from this person. At least with music, that's my situation. I think with a lot of DJs in general too. Yeah. And musicians, you can pull like, oh, I got this influence from that person.
Yeah, I mean, he's even said to me too as well. I think we all are a product of little pieces of fabric in the past that we made our own little life blanket out of. And with him, you know, he's always said like, oh, you're very trivial, like you trivial, you know, a lot of like little random things. Well, my brother was a huge age gap, and he would show me like movies from like decades prior. He would show me these things that kind of like influenced me to know, kind of like a leg up on people that I have conversations with. So I mean, that's the thing too as well, is that you're influenced at least by the things that you kind of grew up around. Yeah. So his was with music, obviously. Yeah. But I mean, nobody in your family tree wrote a book.
They didn't write a book. No. But I always had like ideas, and there was always like something in my head. Like I see myself as a creative person, and I guess this was just what ended up being my creative project at the time. Yeah.
Was this happening a lot in front of you and you just didn't realize it at the time? You know what I mean? Like, I feel for you to write a book about something that obviously you talked about, that you care about, you're pretty invested in. Were you practicing a lot of these things subconsciously, besides the journaling at least? Was it already happening and you didn't realize it? So like, oh, that's why I had those occurrences, or those situations popped up, or I built this habit of X. You know what I mean? Did you realize that once you actually dove deeper into it and you had these conversations with people and you're like, I feel like you touched on it too, where you're saying like successful people you look at are like, oh, they're so big, I can never be like them. But it's like, oh no, we're actually kind of very similar in a lot of ways. They just maybe have time up on me or something.
I think that I've always tried to look at it like that.
Yeah.
And this might be because I'm Nigerian. We all think that we can do anything.
Yeah.
But no, I think that I talk about a lot in the book about like experiences that I've had in the past. And I think like a lot of the experiences I've had have shaped me, but I don't think until I took the time to look back and analyze those experiences did I realize that they've led me to where I am now. I think that I talk a lot about like self-awareness and like analyzing yourself and like knowing yourself. And I think that's very important just because once you know who you are, it becomes a lot easier to move around and to figure out where you belong and like what you excel in and like what you're just wasting your time in, I guess, or following it just because it's a trend or like whatever that may be. So I've always been the type who wanted to really understand why I was doing what I was doing. Like I think a lot, I'm really in my head. And I just always wanted to analyze things. I don't know. I'm a very analytical person.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's answering the question, but
yeah,
I just think that before doing it, I didn't really put together the pieces. And I think this book put those pieces together for me. And now I realize how I've gotten here. And a lot of the book talks about like how I've gotten here. Yeah. To this point.
This is a side note too, because I looked at your, like when I do my research, I have to look at everybody's Instagram, whatever like that. You travel a lot.
I do travel a lot.
Does that have an effect on your perspective, like your?
Yes.
Right.
Traveling, it opens your mind. I think that when you're in the same place for too long, it's like a groupthink sort of thing. You just start to think like everybody that you're around, you don't know what you don't know. So until you leave and go somewhere else, like, do you start to understand that there's more to life? And I think that before I studied abroad. So I studied abroad in Italy. And before going abroad, I was just very like in my ways. I was like, oh, I'm just going to be this young professional executive. And like, that's all I want to do. But then I was having issues with like friends. Like, I wanted to see more. I wanted to know what more there was to what my environment currently was. So that's why I always wanted to travel, and that's why I enjoy travel, because in talking to different people, I've learned so much. Like, this is really off on a tangent, but just like as Americans, we're really bad global citizens. Like, we don't know what's going on in other countries. But when you talk to people in other countries, they know everything that's going on in America. But like, why don't I know what's going on in their country?
Yeah. We've had that discussion too.
100%.
Like, how do we not know what's going on like in China or certain these countries? We see glimpses of it on a timeline and we continue to just...
Unless you go and seek it out, like you're not going to find it. Like, you have to look for it yourself. And I feel like they teach people in other countries to know about other countries. And two, I learned a lot about like here in America, just in general, I feel like we're very like work. Yeah. Like, I just want to get money, I just want to work, blah, blah, blah. Other places, like, they're more about like, how do we enjoy life? How do we like spend time with family? At least that's what I got in Italy. But I feel like I've also got that in a lot of the other countries I've visited as well. They're less materialistic than we are.
Yeah.
One of my good friends, Andy, he traveled to he's Chilean, and he recently came back from Chile within the past year, and he spent some time out there. But one of the things that he told me about the culture was that they collectively have like a lunch coffee break as a country. Like, it's not as a section. It's like everyone knows that between this and this time we're chilling, which is crazy because that's not the case here.
Well, there's European countries too that they leave work and go home and nap, or just spend time with their family for lunch. I heard
that like not like factual.
No, I've heard from people that travel over there. I mean, it may not be as like as like a legit,
as like crazy as we see.
Yeah, as crazy as we see. But the reason why is because there's that book called Outliers. Remember I brought it up to you?
Yeah, you did. Yeah,
you've heard of the book, right?
I haven't read it, but I've heard of it.
Okay, so I mean, in the very, very beginning, the author explains on how immigrants came from Europe, and they pretty much built, even though they went to this land of opportunity, they pretty much rebuilt what they have already had there. They tried to exit what they had because it was, they didn't have as much money or whatever it may, resources. They come to this land of opportunity, and they essentially just rebuilt everything that they already know. And they were living longer, and they were trying to figure out why. Was it the diet? Was it whatever it may be? And essentially it was brought down to that they would take breaks in the middle of the day. They would go and check on their neighbor. They would bring their neighbors food and all these kind of things. And I think that's what, as Americans, we didn't really see. The guys that were doing these studies and such, they were like, that can't be it. And they got laughed at when they brought it to scientists and people that were trying to like make a formula for this on how these people lasted, or live longer. And they realized that it was just because of that. They're like, no, it has nothing to do. Like they still ate, high fats and all this kind of stuff that's still, whatever. So, but they did talk about how, yeah, like they're people, it's not as glorified, like, oh, they all get to take breaks and blah, blah, blah. But there is some smaller towns that will stop. They're not as busy, as traffic driven, but they stop and they actually do communicate with each other and take a break and enjoy their lifestyle.
Exactly.
So they're not.
There's so much more about like leisure activity and spending time with family and friends and just taking life in, enjoying like the present moment. I feel like here we're just all, what's next? Where are we gonna go next? Blah, blah.
It's so fast.
Yeah. I'm the same, and I'm like learning to do more of like being present and like accepting like where I am now. But yeah, again, like traveling just really taught me that there's more to life. There's more than just what is within what I'm around all the time. So that's why I like to travel more, because I like to talk to new people, to see their perspectives on what they think. And I think that has expanded my own mind.
Okay.
What's your favorite city so far? So I see you just traveled to New York. That looked really exciting.
New York was fun. I was there for my book launch event. So
okay. How was that? I saw that whole speech that guy was giving. I mean, that gave me chills. I'm like, I'm not even getting indicted into this thing. Like, this is pretty cool. You know what I mean?
Again, like I told you guys, how I wasn't acknowledging the fact that I was an author. So that was like okay, this is an accomplishment. This is huge.
Yeah.
So it was nice, and I got to see all the other authors too. And while we were writing the books, we had to do like these group chats, like Skype. It's called Zoom. Do you guys use Zoom?
No.
Yeah, it's just a meeting platform.
Yeah. So we would meet on Zoom, and this girl who we would meet on Zoom, and then we would go into separate like chat rooms just to like talk a little bit more about our ideas with somebody. So the girl who I was in the chat room with the first time, she was also there. So we were just talking to each other about how it's so crazy how like our books evolved from what that original idea was. So it was just cool to meet the other authors. My family and friends were there. But yeah, and my book is in the New York Public Library forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as I said, you are an author. Like you gotta have to accept it for what it is, because you're in this place where people can actually legitimately, like, there's someone that's gonna go in there and pick it up that you'll never meet. You may never meet, rather.
And I might never know what they thought of it, they took. But yeah, I'm an author. Yes.
Yeah.
Can I ask you as well, because I don't want to kind of let that thought kind of drift away. You mentioned a few times actually kind of having this as a significance in your life and at the end of your life and all these things. Is there, with that kind of, we have those conversations too of like what we want to achieve in our life, and not to put too much stress on the overall idea of like age or time, like, you know, not try to race it, because you're ultimately going to lose that race regardless. But is there certain things within your life that after writing this book or even pre-book that you want to achieve at this point in your, you know, obviously things will change in 5 years, but is there things that you kind of
are you asking me what I want to do in 10 years?
Yeah, well, everybody has this like 5-year plan or whatever it may be, but is there certain things that you personally want to achieve, not as business wise, but I mean, the book was not necessarily something in your agenda at one point. So is there something with this, I mean, with this book kind of opening your eyes to say, this is what I kind of want to do within my life. And
yeah.
it doesn't have to be like a success or a business wise. It could be something else.
Yeah, I think that what I think is something I would like to do is really just inspire people. I mean, I think that's like a cliche answer, but that's really it. And I feel like that is something that I can continue doing in my life, and that, you know, it comes up often where people are like, oh, like, Fatimah, like my mentees, like I have a bunch of mentees back in school, and they're like, oh, Fatimah, like you inspired me to do this. Like, thanks for telling me this. Like, you really inspired me. So I just really want to continue that. And whatever that looks like, I'm open to it. Also, I'm like very open-minded to what comes. But all I know is that whatever I do, it's really serving to inspire people by just like what I'm doing. And that's the whole thing behind like Simply Tima too. Like, a lot of people want to be influencers or like want to display something on social media. I literally wrote this down in a journal entry, actually. It was like, I'm creating Simply Tima because, not because I want to be like goals, not because I want to be an influencer, not because I want to be anything. Like, I just want to document my real journey of trying to become whatever that may be, and allowing people to see that. And I feel like I've stuck with that, and I can see that people are taking that message away. And that's just what I want to continue to do. And I think that this book allows me to do that. I think that working right now is allowing me to do that. So really, I just would like to be in spaces where I can continue to create some sort of change. And if that can someday go to like a global scale, I mean, clearly I like traveling and I like global affairs and everything like that. So just anything with inspiring people and on a global outlook is really what I want to do.
Okay. Yeah, because I that's one of the things that I took away from it that I kind of love, is that especially with writing a book, or even just something that we try to achieve with the podcast too as well, through audio recordings or visual recordings, is that we're living in a time in which we can allow us to have a full hold of the narrative for our lives, our lifestyles, or our lives in general. So at the end of it, we don't have someone else writing a story. Like, I see yourself being successful. I mean, if I'm being completely honest, the strive and stuff that you have, especially to write a book, not only that, but just the way you use social media and capitalize on it, you use it. So with that, if you are successful, things like this will allow you to have full control of your story being told well after you're gone, rather than someone speaking for you. And so that's kind of why I like, you know, the podcast or something like that. That's why I always ask. I do hate the whole 10-year question.
What is the 10-year question? Are you asking?
No. I mean, you answered it perfectly, but it was like, you know, we always talk about like, not necessarily in 10 years, but like, what do we want to achieve at the end of our lives? And I told him, was one of the things for me was that I just had a son. So I want to be able to say that at one point I taught him something other than just like, do that thing with shapes, you know, like whatever, but like taught him something else that allowed him to move further than I did, and my father did, and my parents did, whatever. So I think that's kind of one of the things I took away from it. And then even what you were saying with like on page 20, I kind of want to bring some stuff from the book, actually.
Hold up real quick before you. I think it's good that, sorry, you guys looked at the screen like it was
okay. I thought you
no, I was like just from what you were saying with that, I think you answered, because Lou had you both answered Lou's question in your own way. So Lou was asking you like, what's your 10-year like goal, plan, what you want to do, and I admire that you answered it and like, well, I'm gonna be doing my purpose, your why, that you touch on a lot in the book. It's not necessarily like I have to be this person at a certain time, or I have to be doing what other people think I should be doing, or what's, you know, society think is cool at the time, whatever. It's kind of like you just understood what your why is. If I just continue to do what I feel that I would do regardless of what else was happening within my life, I would still be doing this thing. I know it's going to get me to wherever
exactly.
You're almost achieving like success on a daily basis. You know what I mean? When I think when people structure their weeks by that, or you know, I'm going to invest my time, my only precious thing that I can't give up on earth, to do what it is my heart is feeling me to do, or this intuition that is pushing me to do, is because you're really just truly living out your purpose. You know what I mean? Whether you think that's invested in you or it was summoned in you by some kind of, you know, spirit of your faith or whatever your culture is, but it's like you understand why you're going to be doing something, you know, and it's more important than what it is a little bit.
I think that helps more too. Like if once you can figure out what that thing is, your why, it becomes a lot easier to move, and it becomes a lot easier to be patient and like waiting for things to happen. And like, instead of me always being stressed of like, I should be doing this when I'm at this age and I should be doing this, like, okay, why do I want to do it in the first place? Because sometimes that why is like, I just want to flex for like friends or like whatever that may be. I don't know. But like once you come to realize like what you want and like why you want it, it just, things become easier and they start to fall in place more. Like I've been realizing that in my own life. Like as soon as I've gotten to the point of like knowing and understanding like why I'm doing what I'm doing, like what I'm there for, it becomes easier to move through the motions or like whatever it is that the process and the journey looks like, because I know that it's going to lead me to where I need to be. So that's why I'm saying with this book, the why for I wanted to write it was because I wish there was something like this for me, right? But with that now I have the book that like backs me if I want to do something else. Like say I want to go speak to high school students, or I want to go, I don't know, I'll just say I want to do like speaking engagements, which is something I'm interested in doing with the book now because I've written this, I have something to then continue with, and it just keeps growing. Like I don't think my goal of, you know, being like a leader has changed. Like I mean that's like a goal that I have, right? I don't think that's changed. I think that it continues morphing itself as I continue along my journey. And I think because I'm open to things changing and I'm willing for new things to come in, that gives me opportunities that I didn't think of. So like if I would have shut down this book, I don't know what would have happened, but I was just like, you know what? The opportunity presented itself. Let's try it. Let's see what happens. And I mean, I'm happy that I did it now. And I think that that's what we all just need to do. It just needs to be very open to what's coming and just writing it out. If it doesn't go well, cool. Now you know not to do it anymore. But if it goes good, it's like you are now progressing. So that's why in the book too, I say there's no winning and losing. There's only learning and winning. So
like as far as like you have a book that is essentially put in place to kind of help guide and find your why and such. When you drift away, do you go back to your own book, or do you still have certain people that you kind of use them as ways to motivate yourself?
To both. Okay, I'll answer the first part of do I go back to the book? In writing the book, when I had to revise and like reread them, I was like, dang, like this is so relevant for right now. So yes, I do. If you ask me, have I read the book since it's been finished? I haven't, but let me tell you why. I've spent so much time looking at it and getting it revised that if I reread it right now, I feel like I would just criticize like what little thing I missed. So I'm just trying to forget the whole writing process and then write it when I just see it as a book. And not like my book and reading it for what it is. So I think I'm going to read it in January.
Are you giving yourself like a timeline?
I am.
I'm reading it again.
It's my first book for 2020.
Just let it
Now, as far as like other people that you draw motivation from, or you know, kind of even maybe assisting you in writing the book too as well. Do you have certain people that you at the moment kind of like
I have tons, and I talked about mentorship in the book too. So I have a lot of mentors in my life. So it was funny. The other day, one of them called me and he was just telling me, "Oh, I got your book," and he was just like super hype about it. I was like, "Oh yeah, exciting." And then I was just telling him about like something really cool like happened with the book. Somebody who's really important is gonna get the book, and it might really change how things go. But I was just telling him, I was like, "Oh, like I don't know if I'm ready for this. Like I just released the book. I thought like I was going to have some time to chill first, but now like I have to get prepared for this lady to read the book because this is insane.
Yeah.
And he was just like, Fatimah, you need to learn more just to accept things that are happening and realizing that like you deserve these things that are happening and that they're happening for a reason. So a lot of the times when I feel myself like doubting or whatever it is, like I have a lot of mentors to like come and give me that encouragement, but also too they'll humble me real quick.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I think you need that. You
Yeah.
need that too. So
Yeah.
I think I would say mentors. My family was really a part of it too, because I would literally be writing and I would just be like, you know what, I'm done. I'm not writing the book.
Yeah.
And they would just be like, Fatimah, just keep writing. Even if you only like get an idea tonight for like a chapter, like you made progress.
Yeah.
So they were very encouraging too along the way. I didn't allow them to read it though. So I let other people like help me with the revisions, but I didn't let my parents read it.
Have they since?
Oh yeah.
read it?
My dad and my mom, they finished it in like 2 days. It was insane.
Nice.
And
They were just sitting at the kitchen table like.
no, they would wake up in the morning and read it. They would go before they were going to bed, they would read it.
Yeah.
And it's so crazy because like my parents are very, very honest. So like if it wasn't good, they would have been like, it's not good.
Yeah.
They could not put the book down. And once they finished reading it, I sent them out. Because once I got the assurance from them that they enjoyed the book, that's when I was like, okay, like this is something
I have
good.
something.
I was like and yeah, so I guess like my parents, I have an older sister and she's like somebody I look up to. Like I don't know, like my sister's my role model, so a lot of what I do, I like copy her. I copy how she dresses, I copy how she like moves. I'm just I'm like a little her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I think that's good too as well. I know you speak about it, obviously, like your struggles with like the traits. Is it 4 or 5 traits you said?
5.
It was 5.
5 traits, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
To kind of like.
What were yours, Lou? I wrote down mine.
we'll go over that in a minute.
Nice.
But I mean, even
He's
with
like
that,
funny, cute, good looking. Like, Lou, I don't think that's a trait.
that's
What?
not a trait, man. I think that's always good too as well for people that are like watching and kind of like subscribe to your kind of lectures and such things like that too as well, is because you do still give them a transparency and a glimpse of like, I still have self-doubt, my own self, even though I wrote something that is supposed to instill assurance in you, to, go after it and be, 100%. I still have those moments where I kind of like maybe have self-doubt, or maybe have these moments where like I need some sort of guidance and to have those people around you.
And I again, like I did my best in the book I didn't want to come across as preachy. A lot of self-help books can come across that way.
Very preachy.
Where it's like, I'm above this, I'm telling you what to do. I would never do this, but you need to like get it together. And I wanted to be very like relatable. And I think in telling my own stories and like sharing my own vulnerabilities, it makes it relatable to where you're like, okay, like I feel her. So like, I want to keep reading. And that's exactly why I try to be open in my journey, because I don't know. There's no point in putting on like this facade of like who you are. Like people relate more to you being yourself.
Yeah.
Even with like being online or just that too. People don't like just seeing the highlight moments. Once you can share like the truth of who you are, that's when you can grow a better audience of people who relate.
Yeah.
What's your traits, bro?
Oh.
He's about to pull them up.
Oh, hold on. Let me just.
Sam's got all these notes, and I'm waiting to see. He's like,
They're also on my
It's-
phone too, and it's recording, so I can't like. grab it and look at it, but,
It's so funny. My coworker too. I was talking to him. He was like, Fatimah, I read your book, and like I've been doing the challenges at the end of the chapters. I was like, oh, okay, that's good. I'm happy.
One of my traits were, or well, at least in 5, they're not in any given order because some of them are greater than the other. I would just say communication, work ethic, transparency, giver, and mean well / like good intentions.
I love it.
Yeah. Can you go into detail about those?
Um,
Why did you choose those?
I think having good intentions is like a really strong trait that I try to sense in people. So I feel like if I carry that myself and people can like reciprocate that at a very early stage of a relationship building, then I think that's very vital.
Okay.
And I would say obviously good work ethic needs to be matched with a lot of things. One thing I've been thinking about too, just from listening to, because I'm a big follower of like a lot of other, I don't even want to say motivational speakers, but like entrepreneurs and people that are actually doing things and not more so just like putting up quotes of stuff that are living by their actions. So I'm a big follower of just like Gary Vee, and one of the things that he talked about that I've always like thought about in my mind too, is that, you know, I don't think everyone's lazy. I think you just kind of become lazy at something that you don't show interest in anymore. And I think that's important for when, like, this is a really good topic now related to the book. I think when you find that sparked interest in something, you don't no longer become lazy to something. You know what I mean? I think laziness is a sign of something that you have this interest towards. Like me, I'm still really terrible at school. I'm on my senior year, and just with how much attention and passion you could see that I put towards music or the podcast or something else I got going on, that you can see and sense the drive from me, versus if you were to see me in the classroom, like I'm literally doing everything possible to not pay attention or not just follow through or whatever. So it's still something I have very tough battle with. But it's something I thought about. It's like, man, I know I'm not lazy, and I know I'm not a failure. It's like I'm getting F's and not F's, but it's like I'm getting pretty poor grades or whatever in something. But then it's like people look at me and be like, yo, you're killing it in the DJ and you're killing it in music. So I don't think laziness is a real thing. I think it just shows interest in something you don't care about.
And see how, like, even with you just being aware of that, and that's exactly why the book is formed in the way that it is, of like, first it's about how did you get here? That's really how it's starting off, of like acknowledging why you got here, who you are, becoming more aware. Then it gets into what are your sparks, like what are those interests that you do have, and then once you can recognize that, then you can move forward to then building upon that to create it into something that's big for you.
Right.
And like, right, you've acknowledged, I mean, that's fine.
Yeah.
I also, like, I've realized that school is not for everybody.
It is not.
It is not for everybody at all. And
I don't think it originally ever was. You know what I mean? It's kind of just something you were forced to go through if you want
to do.
Yeah. You know?
I agree. And I mean, you realize that your spark was in music and in DJing, and you've continued to follow that, and that's how you've built into what you are now.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, like, think of people who like don't know what that is yet.
Right.
Like, once they're able to find what is that interest that I have, then you can figure out, okay, like, let's make this into something real that I can actually continue doing. So that's why it's important. I think you need to first know yourself to then figure out, like, what do you want to do in finding your why.
Yeah, we have that conversation where, like, we just had that today where you were doing something.
We have a lot of, we'll have I'll say a comment that could lead into a really deep conversation, and Lou will be like, nah, we don't have time for that right now. So
we don't have, like, I'm just really trying to eat this bowl of cereal right now. Like, you're making it.
And then, like, this morning, I was like, Lou, what if we are actually the aliens? Like,
and I was like, Sab, please just go back to sleep.
You're like, not right now.
Not right now. No, we had the conversation where so to give you a little background, he is DJing, and he's had a conversation with other individuals where they say, like, you just need to focus, kind of like preachy, like you said, and like certain people are come off across as that, and they're saying you need to do this in order to market yourself for just this one lane. And I see him do production, I've seen him do, you know, this with me, whatever it may be, and I say, you know, like, it's not just that. You can almost just build yourself as a personality. You could build yourself as this overall thing, where if you only limit yourself to that one avenue and you spend all your energy on that one individual thing, you're not going to be able to kind of backtrack and say, like, well, you don't want to overwhelm yourself with the several things, but you also don't want to limit your potential to just one lane.
Exactly. I think too, like, it becomes, once you can find like that, at least for me, what I've realized is I have two completely different interests. Like I was telling Sabby before I came here, like I'm working in financial services, right? So I work in finance, but I'm really interested in creative things too. So I've been playing with the idea lately of, like, how do I make those two things mesh? And I think that once I can make, like, my two, like, completely opposite things mesh into one, that's like when I found the right thing.
Okay.
And I don't know, like with you, right, you're good at a bunch of different things, so you're just putting them all together to figure out, okay, like how does this all fit into like a puzzle? Because I don't think there's a point in boxing yourself into one thing.
Right. And I think, yeah, I like the comment that you said too. It's like you're good at a lot of different things. But I think if you, I don't want to say marginalize, but you kind of have to scale whatever one thing you're good at is, right? So I like to tend to think of, people might think, oh, your one thing is music. But a lot of times I think a lot of things that I do is more of being a communicator. You know what I mean? I communicate through music, or I communicate in business when I'm talking with clients, or I communicate when I'm talking relationships with people that are going to get me, the next spot of my artistry level. Whatever the case may be, I think it's all comes down to communication, and it's not even music as a whole. Music is just a form of communication. Right. You know what I mean? Like your thing, like you said, is leadership, it's mentorship. A part of that is people learn through reading. You know what I mean? You could be reaching the deaf community because they can't even hear you talk. They could read your book though. You know what I mean? So it's just it's a tool of whatever you're trying to do. Your thing is leadership, mentorship, like self-growth in a way, empowerment. That's a part of it. You know what I mean? So I don't think even just labeling yourself as an author isn't even the right thing to label yourself as.
It's one of the labels.
It's one of the labels, right? It's one of the many things, but it's not the thing. You know what I mean? So that's cool. That's how I look at it.
Yeah. I have a few. Go ahead. I have a few things that I kind of wanted to pick your brain about. This may not be related to the book, but just your overall view of these things may kind of give insight, because obviously we may not be the ones to say things. Okay, so you spoke about how you work in finance, and then also you have these ambitions to create and do these things. A lot of people struggle with working to obviously survive, or to kind of like support their lifestyle, whatever it may be, if they have a family, whatever, house, home. What would be your advice to people, or what would be your kind of like, hey, this is something that I've kind of seen, to be able to manage both of those things? Because a lot of the dialogue is, these 9-to-5s kill your creativity. These jobs will limit your ability to, when you get home, you're tired. Like you don't want to draw, you don't want to make blogs, whatever. What kind of, I guess, conversation can be put in place so that people can navigate through that?
I personally don't like the idea of like people just like hating 9-to-5s and like saying like, I'm not doing this. Also, before I graduated, I was very like, I don't want to work. I'd rather do my creative stuff. But you need money.
Yeah.
I mean,
realistic.
and to be realistic, like you need money to make money.
Yeah.
But also at the same time too, like what I've told myself lately, I don't think anybody fully likes their job.
No.
Especially your first job. But I've been telling myself, okay, what can I like learn from this, and like what will the takeaways be? How can I use resources that are offered at the company I'm at to then get me to where I want to go? So I think that the 9-to-5 is essential, because until you know exactly what you want to do, like what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
It's almost like, what are we talking about? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think if it gets to the point where, okay, you know exactly what you're trying to do, you have the plan in place, you have everything in order, cool, do you. But I think that in a point of like still figuring it out, and still like still needing the resources to do it, you should take the time to like be in that experience. And I'm talking from like a sense of like you're working a 9-to-5, I guess, like corporate job.
Okay.
I don't know how that would go for like maybe something different, but I think that with working, you are getting experiences that will then catapult you. You're building a network of people. Actually, no, let me take out what I just said about 9-to-5 corporate job. Any 9-to-5 job, you're meeting people. You're talking to people. You're exposed to new things. I think that the mindset needs to change from less of I don't want to be here, but more of like, what can I take away? And once I was able to switch it to that, it's been more manageable.
Yeah.
But two, to the point of you have a 9 to 5 and you get home and you're tired. I mean, cool. That's an excuse, but I mean, like 5 o'clock, it's 5 p.m. You have like, what time do you go to sleep? Like 10? Even if you go to sleep early at 10, I mean, that's hella time.
Yeah.
So like, if you really truly want to do something, then you'll make the time. If you're not serious about it, then you won't.
Yeah.
Like, I was on the train on the way to work writing, and I would go on my lunch break and write, and then I would get on the train home and write. So like, I found the time. And I think that's, if you're serious about something, you find the time to do it. And it makes more sense to do your 9 to 5 and make money while you're trying to build to something than not have a 9 to 5, not make money, and just be out here.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think the 9 to 5 funds the dream. I think that's what it needs to be, more of a mindset of like, the 9 to 5 will fund what I eventually want to do.
Yeah.
So,
That's why we have these discussions, like when we have events and stuff like that, because like, let's just say for my instance, for my example, like I edit the videos. I spend a lot of time at my job. They're longer hours. And when I'm on break, I either have I can just sit here and watch a bunch of YouTube videos that are just filling in voids, or I can edit a video. You know, and those are those discussions where you have to have, no one's there telling me to do it. You know, I have a deadline of when these videos need to be dropped. And you can either just say, I'm going to use this time appropriately, or I'm just going to waste it and just watch videos where I'm like, I just spent like 30 minutes watching someone bake goods for like half an hour or whatever it is.
Yeah.
and it's very easy to like consume things, like consuming
easy.
content or like whatever it is, and just not working is like very, very easy. And that's why a lot of people do it. But like, once you get to the point of being serious about it and continually doing things and making progress, then you know that, okay, I'm going to get there someday. But if you're people who are just I hate people that just talk. Like it annoys me personally because I mean, everybody can talk. We can all say we want to do something. And I wrote about that in my book too. My dad, I told my dad like I tell my dad everything I want to do. And at one point he was just like, okay, cool. Are you just going to keep telling me, or are you going to like actually go and do something?
Yeah.
So that like changed too, like how I looked at things. Cause I mean, talk is cheap. That sounds really bad.
No, but I mean, it is very true. We've dealt with that so many times. I mean, even going back to, okay, so talking about work, like your works in general, like you're building your resume for, you're building a work resume that may not actually translate to what you want to do creatively.
But it builds credibility.
It does.
And that's another thing I've come to accept, is that it's building credibility as well.
Yeah, because when we have our like La Bamba nights and such like that in the past, I would manage them. I have no experience of running events, none, but I've had experience of managing stores. And it may not be the same, but that mentality of like, okay, I know time management wise from these stores of like how someone else did it, and this needs to be done, that needs to be put this way, blah, blah, blah. Like all of those things that I may not have enjoyed saying I worked at those companies or someone else. I absorbed everything that I've learned from there and used it in a filter to like say, okay, this is how I'm going to run this. Someone does this, I'm going to figure it out, whatever it is. And I think that's like the message that could be kind of put across, at least for me, is that you have to just take it for what it is at these jobs. You don't want to be here. We get it. We understand it, but take what you can from it and use it in your content. Yeah. In your content.
Exactly.
Another thing. So this is just something that we've seen on Twitter a lot too as well. There's a lot of people, because I mean you deal with something more so where your book is not limited to your own city, but it's also where you can go. You probably see where I'm going with this one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Where you can be in this city and it's doing really well in New York, and you're not even there. You don't have to be there. A lot of discussion on Twitter and on social media is that people have this kind of like hatred or resentment towards their own cities. They don't get the love that they need to from their city. They want to respect or whatever it is. Can you kind of shine light on maybe the illness to what it may see, like to talk about how you may not need to be, you may need to move, or do you believe in people need to move out of their city if they're not receiving the amount of support it is, or Have you seen those kind of discussions here and there, where people are like, "Oh, I hate this city," like it?
Yeah, I see it every once in a while. Also, like, I don't use Twitter that much, but I do know what you're saying. Okay, so my view on that, I guess I'll take it away from the city thing, but more of your friends, like your close friends.
Okay.
I think that a lot of the times when you're first starting something new, it won't be your friends who support you. It'll be different people that maybe you've never met before that will support you, or like
100%.
maybe like just like associates that you have, or people you just meet on the street or whatever it is. Because when I first started like my YouTube channel, I mean, cool, like a couple of my friends would say like, oh, cool, you made a YouTube channel, but like nobody was really trying to like support it for real. But when I studied abroad, I went and studied abroad. I was like, yeah, guys, like I have a YouTube channel. They're like, oh my gosh, tell me right now. I'll subscribe to your channel.
Right.
And like, it wasn't like that same kind of love before. And I don't want to knock any of like my friends now, because I think that with this book, like everybody showed up to support me, which was really crazy.
Yeah.
I think that when you're first starting something new, like people just, they just don't know. They're just like, I don't know what it's going to be, what it's going to become, or they're just like, okay, cool, whatever, you created it.
Yeah.
I think once people like see you're serious about it, or they see it's becoming something, then they want to like support you more.
100%.
And I don't know if that's like to be taken bad or good, or like what it is, but it definitely happens. I think people just don't support until they know it's real.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I believe that 100%. But the thing that frustrates me the most is like you could have been a part of the support the
from
whole
the
way.
Beginning. Yeah. And the people who are a part of the support from the beginning, you're like, okay, you guys are real. You guys believed in me anyways.
Right.
And then other than that, the other people are just like, okay, so like now you're hopping on because now you see I'm popping. But like before, it was like that as well.
I think my take on it too, now that I've had time to just reflect and I've built at least somewhat of a career for myself in the time being, I can pinpoint times where I got the most support because I was trying something new that people didn't see. And then when I was doing that big thing kind of became the norm, then the support kind of plateaued. But then when I tried something new again, it kind of rised a little bit. So I think it's more so it's a good and a bad thing, because it's going to push you to not stay complacent. It's going to be like, damn, I need to reach the right people that are actually interested in what I'm doing. The support that I'm getting is great. I'm going to take any admiration and support that I can, but I'm going to keep leveling it up till it hits that right group or that right person or that whatever the case may be. I think it's more so it shows when your audience is getting complacent to the things that you're putting out, and it kind of keeps the fire up on you to like, I got to keep hitting that wow factor, even if they don't support it. You know what I mean? It's just like, do it for yourself then at that point. And maybe that should be an indicator of like where you stand at whatever you do. But don't let it, you got to always accept the good and the bad, because how are you going to accept the praise? Like, for example, the guy that you talked about when like, hey, this girl's going to be reading your book. It's like, if you would have actually, you're going to appreciate that so much more because you've had so much resistance leading up to that. You know what I mean? So I think it's good, and it's a good indicator of showing you like, yeah, I actually do deserve to be standing here right now, or something like that. You know what I mean? It just adds that fuel to it all.
Yeah.
The reason why is because like I see it so much.
Yeah, Lou has another take on it.
Okay, cool. Go
and
ahead.
I'm from the mindset that you're not owed anything.
Yeah.
Like I'm your friends don't owe you support.
That's valid.
I don't believe that, you know, your validation of your art or your work is only because my friend showed up today or my city loves me. There's people that I had an example where someone can say, like, let's say for hip hop, somebody says, I'm going to be a rapper today, and they make a song, or an R&B singer or a guitarist or whatever like that. I'm going to start today. And today is Monday, and Thursday I make a song. I release it Thursday night, and by Saturday I've never left my room, my house, or whatever. It goes viral and it blows up. No one from their city even had a chance to support them. So it's like, you're not really owed anything. You can't say that, you know, like these people owe you support or owe you whatever it may be. Like, I have friends that may not listen to this podcast, but they always just support and say like, man, I just really love that you're in a good place. Like you're like, you're happy and you're doing it. Like they don't have to watch the podcast. You know,
Yeah.
some people will watch it.
Mm-hmm.
Some people may not read your book, but they just love that you're going after something.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean they have to buy the book. I mean, it'd be, you know, appreciated if they did, but I think it's kind of like this mentality of like, you deserve that. You don't necessarily deserve it.
Right.
You know, and I kind of see that. Like, yes, you should be respected, but you can't just expect someone to do it. Like that, it's just the norm, which is bad, that people, it takes time for people to kind of jump on the wagon. But there's also a lot of people that have ideas that they've probably dealt with that don't do nothing, or they half-ass it and they do it for a month or two and then they give up. Like, what's to say like your parents are going to, you know, support you from day one? They've seen you pick up a guitar and quit in 3 months, or, you know, go and say, I want to do football, and then quit after one season. Like, they've seen these things over your lifestyle. They want to make sure that you fulfill it and do it all the way. So I have that kind of like mentality where it's like, you're not really owed anything. You can't say like it's your city's fault.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to technically leave your city. If you want to do it, but don't do it for the reasons because these people in the city didn't support you.
Yeah.
You're not necessarily owed it.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I also see it too as like, if we are like cool, but you're looking at it from a city perspective. I'm looking from like a friend perspective.
Got
just
it.
Because of the fact that I've seen it so much on social media that people will say from your city, like, my city doesn't mess with me, my city doesn't exploit.
Is it Joliet? Or is it
Well,
like
we have
cities?
example because that's people from around here. You know,
Yeah.
we see that from around here. But I've lived in California for over a year and a half. I see it from people
It
from there
happens
too
there
as
too.
well. People
Yeah.
are like, oh, there's so much drama in this city, like blah blah. I need to move, go somewhere else. I lived in a different place. There's
It's the
drama
same
there.
thing, same
It's
Yeah.
the drama, same
it's,
thing.
It's a little bit like the crabs in a bucket. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a little bit of that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remembered what I was about to say. About, you're saying that once you start like doing something and then like people are just like, okay, cool, you're doing it. And then you do
Yeah.
something else and it's like, okay, now I'm interested. And then after a while, they're like, okay, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
I think it's just because I think it comes to a point that they just expect that from you at that point. So then
Yeah.
it's just like, once you continue doing it, it's like, cool, like we expect them to. So
Right.
when you do something new, it's like, oh, okay, wow, congratulations. And you get that like momentum again.
Yeah.
And then it goes back. And I can see that too in things that I've done. I think that when I make videos, it's just like, okay, cool, like we know Fatimah makes travel videos.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
what else is there? And then the book came and it's like, okay, wow, congratulations. Or like, people like to congratulate when there's a milestone, but they don't stick with you through like that in between period.
Yeah.
So that's hard. And I don't know where I'm going with this.
No.
But I mean, do you personally believe that people should necessarily give you some sort of congratulations in between?
No.
No, they just don't owe
No.
you anything. I think.
I don't think I'm looking for it either.
Yeah. Because that's my my kind of like trying to wrap my head around it is it
No, what I personally, my take on it too, just having discussion now, I think it's more so, you talk about this in the book, and a lot of people, successful people, know this. They know that, you know, money is a result of the value that you bring to people, to the marketplace, to anything. It doesn't even have to be money. It could be whatever you hold on the same pedestal as money. You know, so I think it's more so people that get upset. It's like, are you bringing enough value to people? You know what I mean? It's one thing that I talked about a lot too. That's why I always go back to like when I cherish like communicating a little bit more, and it's something I always try to grow and try to actively see where I'm lacking, is because I want to be able also like communicate to other people that are doing great as well, give recognition when recognition is deserved. How do you expect people to give you so much praise when it's like, do you give that out as well too? You know what I mean? It's like, this isn't a popularity contest. Should I be giving you, you know, why should I be going out of my way for you? I think people now that we're having a lot of topics on like gratitude and like being thankful, I think that's more so where society is heading a little bit. They're going to be like, do we want to see you be nice, or see you like actually care about other things, or care about people in a sense, you know what I mean? And we live in a lot of very canceled culture too, so that takes a factor in it. People are looking for a lot of negative and things of why they shouldn't support you first before looking at why they should. You know what I mean? So they're going to judge you for every single thing. I mean, you could take examples. This doesn't just happen to local people. It happens to everyone. You can look at, you know, Drake, when he was having that feud with Pusha T. People think he got, you know, he was done by Pusha T. It's like, I don't think that's the case. You know what I mean? It's just like the society overall thinking of it. It's like he's a very successful, you know, if you look at him, people could say like, oh, he's always been in his prime. And then you have people on the turn of it be like, this guy's better or whatever. Like, you're always going to have that feedback, that judgment or that thing. I think like what we talked about originally of why your why is important, why your purpose is important. It's like no matter the criticism that you were receiving from something, you would still be doing it, and by result, you'd be getting better over time. But because you didn't fall into those traps of listening to the negativity or whatever, then you actually would have been great at it. You know what I mean? Or you actually would have kept and then you would have got it right on how to actually give value, or you know what I mean? I think it's time. You know what I mean? People that are actually good at something, it's time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next. Okay.
Next question.
Yeah.
No, I'm
Next
just
question.
letting it sit because I do believe that. I think there is a.
I feel like I'm saying too much.
No, you weren't.
No, because
I thought you guys were waiting for me to say something. I was
No.
like, okay.
no, I mean going back to what you were saying, there is a point where like
I
people.
gotta get this off my chest.
Go ahead.
Y'all got me hot.
He's typing at the same time.
Who want the smoke? Who want it?
Yeah, I think there's like people will enjoy your rise up to fame, and then when you get to the fame, they're waiting for your downfall, and that's like the common dialogue for most stories, even like movies and such things like that. Like, I mean, speaking of Drake, like that's a prime example of people loved him when he was, you know, coming up, and then eventually at this point, they were like everyone's just waiting to see like when is
When's
it
your
going to
next
happen?
mess up? When's your next thing I can
When
make
is it
fun
actually
of?
going to happen?
Yeah.
And even to like small milestones compared to, you know, whatever, like for our example is like we can continue to do these podcast episodes and just continue to do it. Eventually it's going to phase out. Like we'll build an audience, but it's going to be like, okay, they're just kind of doing the same thing. And to the point where the amount of episodes increase. The certain artists we get increase.
Or
we get signed to a certain company, and now we're on a more, you know, global scale. Then people are gonna be like, wow, okay, let me tune back in, you know, whatever.
It's building the hype.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of the times, I think a lot of the creative things that people create are great.
Yeah.
They just haven't gotten the recognition yet. So once it gets to the point of like one person can give you the recognition who's in like this really high place, and then like automatically you're like super relevant.
Yeah.
You know what's a good example of this? When I first heard Kid Cudi, all right, let's just take an example of Kid Cudi as an artist, right? So he comes out, he's got a couple of his first mixtapes, and then people don't really know about him until Day and Night. When I first heard Day and Night, that caused me to go check out his earlier mixtapes. You know what I mean? So probably when he released that mixtape, he didn't get as much traction as he wanted to.
Yeah.
But now his numbers are probably more higher than he ever thought they were gonna get. You know what I mean? From
Yeah.
people over time listening to his music.
Going back.
So it's going back. You know what I mean? So it's like you're just creating reputation for yourself as you go.
And a song like Day and Night actually was out for like over a year and a half.
And then it got Lizzo is a
Even Liz, I was just about to say Lizzo.
Yeah.
Same thing happened. She's been out for like 8 years.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden she was on that movie on Netflix, and then after that she popped.
Yeah.
She was on a movie on Netflix.
I didn't even know
Her song was in
Oh,
a
the
movie.
song.
You know that I just took a DNA
Yeah,
test?
yeah.
That song, yeah.
But it's like I said, like she probably was frustrated because, you know, or Kid Cudi was frustrated because it was like, I know these songs are great. I know I'm great. And I mean, Kid Cudi's example was that it was over in Europe. They were playing that song. I think it was either the original or the remix version. And Kanye and Jay-Z, I think, were in the club and they were listening to it. And they're like, who is this? They seen everyone there messing with it. But in the States, they weren't. Kind of going back to like how, you know, different countries are going to take things, you know, for different value. And they were like, let me go contact who that is because this song is going to be perfect over there. And then lo and behold, he becomes successful. So I think that is the same thing. I mean, we can kind of circle back to the fact is like, you may not need to seek validation in your own stuff. Just you have to continue to do it because at one point or another, you could just be sitting at home and it just goes viral. You don't necessarily want viral success like overnight. You want to see a slow, you know, progress over time to appreciate it more. But at the same time, it's like you gotta take it for what it is.
Yeah.
And I don't think. Oh, go ahead. I don't want to ruin your thought. Yeah.
I was just saying, I think that goes with like the whole, again, like once you understand like what your why, we keep going back to this finding your why thing, but once you get there, you can continue creating even if you don't get the recognition. Like Lizzo or Kid Cudi or whoever it is, like they have continually done these things, but they kept doing them because they wanted to and they liked what they were doing and they saw a purpose in it or whatever you want to call it. And a lot of the times that's what it takes, because if you're really not invested in something, then you'll just quit and you'll just be done.
Right.
But once you know what that why is, what that purpose is, then you continue to do it. So I mean, again, if your city's not supporting you, if you're 9 to 5 you're not liking it, okay, well then what's that thing that's going to continue?
And I think people get caught up in like the geographical scale of the things. Like everyone's connected to the internet. You're not limited to just your city. You know what I mean?
Reach anybody now.
You could reach anyone. So I feel like there really is no excuse. You know what I mean? So
yeah. Can we before, because I know how are we doing on time?
Oh, we're pretty far over, but this has really been a good talk. We're at closing in on 90 minutes.
Okay. Can we talk about because we went all over the place and I haven't even got a chance to
I
say,
think this is really good though.
As far as like the book,
I'm excited for when
we
this comes
talked
out.
about before the podcast started about the overall art design, even, you know, how you came to kind of finalize the image of what everyone's going to see when they pick up that book. Can you go into detail with that?
Yeah. So I was really okay. So when I first put out the book, I had a mock-up of the cover. It was just like a white book. It had Sparked on it. People were like, "Oh, is this your real cover? You should keep it like that." I was like, "This is not my real cover. I'm gonna fix it." I was really encouraged by like minimalist covers. I think they look clean. I think they look nice on a coffee table.
Did you pick that material too?
I did not pick the material.
Because that's very minimalist.
I was happy with the material. I thought it was gonna be glossy when I got it.
Yeah.
But no, I took a lot of inspiration from, I don't know if you guys have seen Milk and Honey, that cover.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you know how like it's very minimal, a lot of it came from that. I was like, I just want my title, I want there to be a cute graphic on there, and then that's it, a black book.
Yeah.
The cover was really bad at first. I wish I could pull up a picture for you guys to see. It was really bad.
Just a lot
Maybe you
going
can
on.
if you can find it, you can send it to me and I could put it and post that. And maybe
Okay.
I'll be able to put it
You
somewhere,
put it
somewhere around here.
Right, okay. Yeah, it was really bad at first. So the cover designers were really, they just worked with what you wanted. So we went back and forth a few times, and this was the result.
That's awesome.
Of the cover. But yeah, the publisher that I used, they went through everything. They gave us everything we needed. We had the editors, we had marketing, we had graphic design, and it was just all.
Did that saying on the cover, did that come after the book, or was that like your compass while writing the book?
No, that came after.
Okay.
Also, the title came after.
Okay.
Yeah, my publisher chose the title. Actually, we were having a conversation, and he was like, "Okay, tell me about a story that you've had so far." I was telling him about the Yvonne orgy story that I wrote about, because that was kind of like the first one I did.
Yeah.
And I was telling him, yeah, she just ended up, she followed this interest she had in comedy. She ended up following it. She was broke for a while, but she really liked doing comedy, and like she ended up getting to where she was. He was like, "Oh, it sounds like she was like sparked by like something that was interested. You should name your book Sparked." I was like, "That's perfect. Let's just keep it. We don't need anything else." I originally wasn't going to have a subtitle on the cover, but I decided to include it. And then the light bulbs kind of
They go with it.
Yeah. It does.
Yeah.
yeah.
It kind of adds to that. It almost looks like a poetry line. I'll take that back, guys.
That's fine.
I take that back, guys. That was
But the whole thing with there being like different light bulbs and one of them being lit is like, you know, not every spark is your spark.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I like it. When I was going through it and I brought it to my job, you've seen like, because at my job there was a lot of time to, if on certain sections, there's a lot of time to read or do certain things, play games on your phone, whatever. And people were kind of like,
what's that?
You know, like, and I said, you know, I got a podcast episode coming up, and there's a young author that we're gonna have on, and we're gonna speak to her about it. And I showed him, you know, your page, and then I was like, you know, you can read it if you. No. Like when you're done. I was like, okay, you know, just. But it is like it brings you in because of the fact that it's so simple, like the bold. I love that. I'm very big into like detail of art and everything. So just that bold white on the kind of like matte black and that yellow sparks. It's just very
like
yellow spark. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I mean, and that's exactly what it was. They did very good, I have to say. I was very happy. And another thing too, when we were getting the book together, I was thinking about it in my head. Like, obviously I couldn't hold it, but I was thinking like, okay, when I'm on the train and I'm reading a book, like it's like this. So whoever's out there,
like you're like reading it like this too, like
does
so
it look
high.
good with this fit or like
yeah. Okay, so I think that's just a perfect way. I know, like I said, I'm trying to tie it all back together and everything like that, but the last thing I do want to talk about is like you did speak, maybe you can't speak on it right now as far as like the individual that may get the book in their hands. You said that you may not want to speak on that, but maybe more so this new year that's coming up, kind of what things you have in place, what things you're kind of looking forward to that you kind of have in the pipeline that you maybe are able to talk to us about.
Yeah. Well, I think that with this book, I think I talked about this. I would love to get into more speaking engagements, just to like talk about the book, a lot of the topics that I have, and like share that with others, and like more of a personal and speaking. So that's one thing. Another thing too is I am with like Simply Tima and like my blog and stuff like that. I'm planning like a new kind of relaunch of what that is and what that'll look like. Don't really want to be associated with just being like a traveler anymore. I think there's like a lot more to what I actually do, and I want to share more of that, like kind of like a blog for the young professional who's like also interested in like things that are creative, because a lot of my friends too, like, you know, we're all working, we're all trying to figure things out, but then we all have like these other interests that are like completely opposite. So kind of like, what does that look like? How can you work but then also like have time to like go after like this other thing that you're kind of interested in? So that's what my blog's going to be centered around. Still, I'll include like travels and things like that. So yes, the blog is set to launch officially in January 2020. I like posted a blog post, so it like kind of is published, but not officially.
Testing the waters almost.
We're testing the waters.
Okay.
What else is there? Just travel more. Traveling more. Planning group travels. That's something that you guys can look out for.
Yeah.
Okay.
What else? There's like another thing that I can't put my mind on right now.
Now, is there more in-store kind of like lectures or book signings that you may want to kind of get involved to as well?
Yeah. So I'm planning a book launch event. So here in Chicago, because I did the one in New York, but that is going to be in January as well. Details are to come. So yeah, I don't know. I'm just excited to really just spread the message of this book first, and just also like go venture into like different areas that I wouldn't have been able to without the book. So just really continuing the momentum of having this book out is really what I have planned for next year. But I've been doing like, what is my 2020 theme, like word. I made a vision board yesterday. I'm very big on like planning things out.
Nice.
So my 2020 theme is intentionality. So just making sure that everything that I'm doing is like directed towards a goal, and where I want to go. So, well, that just means we'll just see what happens next year. But again, basically building on Sparked, speaking, and book launch event, all that good stuff.
Now, when people, obviously we'll have you sign off and where they can find you, do you see people, not necessarily like we spoke on limiting yourself to one specific thing, but is there one social media platform that you're kind of like producing more content on? Maybe like you said, you don't use Twitter as much, but maybe like an Instagram or your website that you would want to, you want to see people kind of for the best up-to-date content and news. What would be the most ideal?
I would say Instagram. Yeah, you guys can find me on Instagram. I'm active on LinkedIn too. I'm getting into like LinkedIn blogging because that's like a new thing that's like Gary Vee has been saying. Getting into that, but really for me, find me on Instagram. Let's just say that for now. The blog is really going to be where everything is hosted. You can follow me on Instagram to then get to the blog. So
Which it kind of makes it a little easier to just a link to go to there and everything.
And
like that too.
your Instagram page is
at Simply Tima. Am I looking
Okay,
this
we'll
way?
do that again. Sorry,
Yeah.
yeah. So in this camera, we'll sign off.
Am I signing off? This is it?
Yeah, we'll
It's
have
all
you
you.
just go ahead and say your name once more, and then obviously we do want to thank you for coming here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This
thanks
is
for
really
having
amazing.
me. I was really happy that you guys asked me to be on here. So
No, he told me, and it was definitely like a different kind of contrast to the amount of conversations that we have, which helps us more than you would probably imagine that it would help us. Like that conversation that you bring us gives us a little bit
He's
more.
gonna text
go
me,
on.
Seb, I got these ideas. I got these. Yeah.
She's gonna be the new host of the podcast. So in that camera, go ahead and sign off, say your name, and then obviously once again just kind of say where they can find you at Instagram or whatever it may be that's the most ideal.
okay, cool. Well, guys, my name is Fatimah Ibidunni, and you can find me on Instagram at Simply Tima, and I'm also on YouTube as well at Simply Tima as well.
Thanks. Sab, want
Awesome.
to sign off?
No, this has been great. You've been a good friend of mine since high school, so it's really cool reconnecting. I think even when you walked up, you were like, "How long has this been?"
Literally, I
Yeah.
don't even know.
It's just like cool. We're like completely different people now in a good way. You know what I mean? So it's cool to see people just evolve into their own persons outside of what you knew them previously from.
Yeah.
So it's really cool.
Thanks.
So I appreciate it, guys. Thank you for joining the conversation, and until next time.